At 9:40 p.m., Seattle-Tacoma International Airport was glowing with the tired light of delayed flights, rolling suitcases, and people pretending not to be exhausted. A final boarding announcement echoed through Terminal B. Final boarding for Flight 281 to Chicago. All remaining passengers, please proceed to Gate B18. Emily Parker sat at Gate B8 with both arms wrapped around a small Navy suitcase and tears slipping silently down her face. She heard the announcement. She understood the words, but she did not move. She was 24 years old, a preschool teacher, and until 3 days ago, she had been engaged to a man who told her he needed space, right before admitting that space had a name, a condo, and apparently his mother's approval. So Emily had packed one suitcase, bought a one-way ticket to Chicago, and told herself she was starting over. Unfortunately, starting over required more mental stability than she currently possessed. Her boarding pass trembled in her hand. She stared at the floor. People around her stood, gathered bags, kissed relatives goodbye, and disappeared down the jet bridge. Emily stayed seated, not because she wanted to miss the flight, because a part of her was terrified that getting on that plane meant accepting that her old life was truly over. A man's polished shoes stopped in front of her. "Excuse me." Emily quickly wiped her cheeks. "I'm fine." The man paused. "I was going to ask if this seat was taken." "Oh." She looked beside her. The entire row was empty. Apparently not. The man sat 2 seats away, giving her polite distance. He wore a charcoal coat, carried a leather overnight bag, and had the calm expression of someone who probably alphabetized his stress. For a minute, he said nothing. Then his eyes fell to the boarding pass in her hand. His brow lifted slightly. "Flight 281? Emily nodded without looking up. "To Chicago?" Another nod. He glanced toward the gate sign above them, then back at her ticket. A very small smile touched his mouth. "I hate to make a difficult evening worse." Emily looked at him. He pointed gently toward the screen. "This is Gate B8. She blinked. "Yes? Your flight boarded at B18. Her face went completely still. The final announcement faded into silence behind them. Nathan Brooks watched realization arrive slowly, then all at once. Emily looked down at the boarding pass, then at the gate sign, then down the terminal corridor. "No, I'm afraid so. No, no, no." She jumped to her feet, grabbed her suitcase, and immediately turned the wrong direction. Nathan stood. "B18 is the other way." "Right. Yes, I knew that." She spun around too fast. The suitcase wheel caught on the leg of the chair. Emily stumbled. The suitcase tipped. The zipper, which had already been emotionally compromised, burst open. Clothes spilled across the airport floor. A sweater, 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, a small pouch of hair ties, and one bright yellow sock that slid dramatically toward a vending machine. Emily froze. Travelers looked over. Someone's child pointed. Emily closed her eyes. "I just missed my plane." Her voice cracked with embarrassment. "And now I've lost my dignity." Nathan calmly knelt and began gathering clothes. Not all of it. Emily opened one eye. He picked up the yellow sock and held it up. "You still have this." Despite everything, a laugh escaped her. It was small and wet and completely unwilling. Nathan folded the sock with unnecessary seriousness and placed it back into her suitcase. "I'm Nathan." "Emily," she said, crouching down to help. "Emily Parker, professional disaster. Pleasure to meet you. You're being polite because I'm crying near underwear. I've seen worse airport situations." She looked horrified. "Please don't say that if it's true." "It is true." "Then lie." "I've never seen anything more dramatic than this sock." Emily almost smiled. Nathan Brooks was 31 years old and the CEO of a private aviation company that catered to people who believed layovers were personal attacks. Ironically, he was flying commercial that night because one of his own company jets was undergoing maintenance, and his operations director had suggested he experience normal travel like a human being. Nathan had not appreciated the phrasing. He was intelligent, controlled, and quietly wealthy in the way that did not require anyone to know it. He also had a dry sense of humor that appeared at inconvenient moments, usually when someone else was falling apart and needed exactly one calm person in the room. Emily, he could tell, was falling apart. After her suitcase was repacked, she ran to gate B18 anyway, Nathan following at a respectful distance, because leaving a crying woman to sprint through an airport alone felt wrong. They arrived 10 minutes too late. The gate door was closed. The jet bridge was empty. The plane was already pushing back from the window. Emily stood there, breathless, watching the aircraft move away. For a moment, she looked so small that Nathan forgot every clever thing he might have said. The gate agent checked her ticket and shook her head with practiced sympathy. "I'm sorry. That was the last Chicago flight tonight." Emily gripped the suitcase handle. "There's no other one?" "Not until morning. Stand by?" "Nothing tonight." Her shoulders dropped. Nathan glanced at the departure board. His own connecting flight to San Francisco had just changed from delayed to canceled. Of course it had. The airport, apparently, had chosen a theme. Emily walked back to the seating area slowly and sat down as if her bones had gone tired. Nathan sat near her, not too close. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Emily let out a shaky breath. "I was supposed to leave tonight." Nathan looked at her. "Chicago will still be there in the morning." She wiped her cheek. "That's what I'm afraid of." He did not ask what she meant. Not yet. Instead, he glanced at his phone, saw the cancellation notice, and leaned back in the chair. "Well," Emily looked over. "What?" "My flight was canceled." "Oh no." "Yes. That's awful." "It is." She looked genuinely sorry for him, even through her own disaster. Nathan found that unexpectedly disarming. Then Emily gave a small, exhausted laugh. "So we're both stuck here? Apparently. In the airport? Unless you know a secret hotel inside the vending machine." She sniffed, then laughed again. "No. Unfortunate." Across the terminal, cleaners moved quietly between rows of chairs. Shops were closing. The last rush of travelers thinned into scattered groups of stranded people, guarding backpacks like treasure. Emily looked down at her wrinkled boarding pass. The wrong gate, the missed flight, the ruined plan. Nathan watched her carefully. Sometimes people missed things because they were careless. Sometimes because they were running from something too heavy to carry correctly. He had a feeling Emily was the second kind. "Do you want help rebooking?" he asked. She looked at him, surprised by the gentleness. "You don't have to." "I know." "Then why are you offering?" Nathan shrugged. "My night is already canceled." That earned him another faint smile. Together, they walked to the airline counter. There were no more flights, no open hotel vouchers, no miracle seats. By 10:31 p.m., Emily Parker and Nathan Brooks returned to Gate B8 with 2 paper cups of bad airport coffee, 1 damaged suitcase, 1 canceled flight notification, and no choice but to wait until morning. They sat side by side beneath the fluorescent lights. Not strangers exactly, not friends yet, just 2 people who had both failed to leave on time, and neither of them knew that the wrong airport gate was about to become the one place they were always meant to meet. Nathan helped Emily rebook her ticket just after midnight. Technically, the airline agent did the rebooking. Nathan simply stood beside Emily, translated the woman's rapid airport language into sentences that made human sense, and prevented Emily from accidentally agreeing to a flight with 2 layovers and an 11-hour stop in Denver. By the end of it, Emily had a new boarding pass for 7:15 a.m. Same destination, different gate, different version of herself, hopefully. She stared at the ticket like it might bite her. Nathan looked over. "That one says B22. "I know. Do you want me to circle it?" "No. I can use a bright color. I'm wounded, not illiterate." He nodded. Fair distinction. Emily slipped both boarding passes into her coat pocket, the new one and the old one. Nathan noticed. "You're keeping the wrong one?" She hesitated, then took out the missed boarding pass and smoothed it between her fingers. "It reminds me not to let my head stay in the past while my body is supposed to be going somewhere else." Nathan didn't answer right away. The line was too honest for a joke, so he only said, "That seems worth keeping." The airline lounge had a few open seats, several stranded travelers, weak coffee, and the strange half-awake atmosphere of people who had surrendered to airport time. Nathan's own flight had been rebooked for morning as well, though he spoke to the agent so calmly that Emily wondered if he had been born with an emergency exit row in his soul. They claimed 2 chairs near the window. Emily tried to stay upright, failed. Her head tipped back against the seat, and within 10 minutes, she was asleep. 5 minutes after that, she snored. Not loudly, just enough that she startled herself awake. Her eyes flew open. What happened? Nathan looked at her over his coffee. You argued with oxygen. Emily sat up too fast. Her elbow hit her cup. The lid popped loose. Cold coffee spilled directly across Nathan's sleeve and lap. Emily gasped. Oh my gosh. Nathan looked down, then back at her. Strong opening move. I am so sorry. I've had worse meetings. With coffee in your lap? Emotionally, yes. She grabbed napkins from the table and began blotting his coat, then realized what she was doing and froze in absolute horror. I'm touching a stranger's pants. Nathan calmly took the napkins from her. Airport friendships move quickly. Emily covered her face. I should be placed in a supervised travel program. That may exist. Please don't look it up. For the first time all night, her laughter lasted more than a few seconds. Nathan found himself listening to it, even after it faded. They did not ask the usual questions. Instead, they talked the way strangers sometimes do when morning is far away and the world feels temporarily paused. Emily told him she had wanted to be a teacher since she was 7, when her second-grade teacher gave her a box of crayons after her father left and said, "Some days, color helps." She became a preschool teacher because small children still believed broken things could be glued, painted, or hugged back together. Nathan smiled at that. Emily asked about his childhood. He told her he had grown up around airports because his mother had worked as a flight dispatcher and his father had repaired small aircraft engines. He loved the feeling of watching planes take off, not because he wanted to leave, but because every departure seemed proof that impossible things could still lift. He did not say he owned a private aviation company, not because he was ashamed, because Emily was looking at him like a person, and he did not want numbers to enter the room. As the hours passed, Emily slowly told him more. About the engagement, about the wedding dress still hanging in her apartment, about how she had spent 2 years trying to become the kind of woman her fiancé's family would approve of. Quieter, thinner, less emotional, more impressive, less herself. Nathan listened without interrupting. When she laughed at herself, it never quite reached her eyes. I guess I wasn't enough, she said finally, staring into her coffee. Nathan looked at her. That sentence explained more than she knew. Not enough. He had heard people say those words in boardrooms, relationships, interviews, family dinners. Usually, they said them when someone else had spent a long time making them feel difficult to love. You missed a gate, he said quietly. That doesn't mean you failed at being a person. Emily blinked, then looked at him. I missed more than a gate. I know, she swallowed. I stayed too long with someone who kept making me feel like I should be grateful he tolerated me. Nathan's expression softened. And now? She looked down at the old boarding pass. Now I'm trying to leave before I forget I was ever someone else. For once, Nathan had no dry reply. He simply sat beside her as the airport hummed around them, and Emily, who had spent months apologizing for being too much, realized he had not asked her to make her sadness smaller. Around 3:40 a.m., her phone rang. Emily glanced at the screen and went still. Nathan noticed immediately. You don't have to answer. I think I do. She stood and walked a few steps away, still within view but out of courtesy's reach. Nathan looked toward the dark windows while she answered. Her voice was quiet at first, then quieter. When she returned, something in her face had changed. The last bit of color had drained from her cheeks. She sat down slowly. Nathan did not ask. Not right away. Emily stared at the floor, phone limp in her hand. My sister called. Nathan waited. Emily's voice barely held. My ex got married today. The words sat between them. Heavy, absurd, cruel in the precise way only timing could be. The woman he said was just a friend, Emily continued, her laugh breaking in the middle. Apparently, they had been planning it for weeks. Nathan's jaw tightened. Emily looked toward the terminal ceiling as if trying to keep the tears from falling upward. I was sitting at the wrong gate trying to fly away from a man who had already replaced me. Nathan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a clean handkerchief. He handed it to her without a word. Emily took it. That silence undid her more than any speech could have. If he had said, "You deserve better," she might have nodded politely. If he had called her ex a fool, she might have laughed and pretended to be strong. But Nathan did not try to fix the pain. He simply gave her something soft to hold while it happened. Emily pressed the handkerchief to her mouth as tears spilled over. Nathan sat beside her, close enough to be there, far enough not to trap her. For a long time, the only sound was the distant murmur of airport announcements, and Emily trying not to sob too loudly in a room full of strangers. Eventually, she whispered, "I feel stupid." "You're not. I waited for someone who was already gone." Nathan looked at the old boarding pass in her lap. Maybe tonight wasn't about missing him. She looked at him through tears. Maybe it was about missing the flight that would have taken you away before you remembered you deserved better. Emily tried to smile. It trembled. "That sounds like something from a movie. I apologize." "No." She wiped her cheek. "I like it." Outside, through the airport glass, planes slept beneath cold lights. Inside, two strangers sat side by side, both delayed, both awake, both carrying stories they had not expected to tell. Emily folded the old boarding pass carefully and placed it back in her pocket. This time, not as proof of failure, as proof that being late to the wrong life might still mean arriving on time for the right one. By sunrise, neither Emily nor Nathan had slept properly. The airport had slowly changed around them. Overnight travelers stretched in chairs. Cafes lifted their metal shutters. Cleaning crews disappeared into staff corridors. The first wave of morning passengers arrived with fresh coffee, bright luggage, and no idea that Gate B8 had quietly held one of the longest nights of Emily Parker's life. Her flight was still scheduled for 7:15 a.m. Nathan's new flight was later. They both knew they should probably say goodbye. Neither of them did. Instead, Nathan stood and nodded toward a cafe near the window. "You should eat before Chicago." Emily looked at the departure board. "I have time." That sounded almost confident. "Don't get used to it." They walked to a small airport breakfast place where everything cost twice what it should, and the muffins looked emotionally tired. Nathan bought eggs, toast, and fruit. Emily insisted on paying for her own coffee, then spilled sugar on the counter while arguing that she was a fully functioning adult with temporary airport damage. Nathan watched her wipe sugar off her sleeve. "Temporary?" She pointed at him with a stir stick. "Do not challenge my optimism." He smiled. After breakfast, they found a quiet area near the big windows where planes rolled slowly beneath the pale morning sky. Emily tore a small corner from her toast and tossed it toward one little bird hopping near the glass doors. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "That seems like the beginning of a problem." "It's one bird." "It's never one bird. It looks hungry. You said that like hunger cancels consequences." 3 seconds later, 4 more birds appeared, then 7. Then an aggressive little sparrow landed far too close to Emily's shoe and looked at her with the confidence of a tiny airport criminal. Emily backed up. "Oh." Nathan folded his arms. "I feel this situation escalating." "It's fine." Another bird swooped in. Emily yelped and dropped the rest of the toast. The birds descended like a feathered tactical unit. Emily jumped behind Nathan. "Why are they organized?" Nathan started laughing. Not politely, not gently. Fully laughing, one hand pressed to his chest while Emily hid behind him from a group of birds roughly the size of dinner rolls. "Don't laugh," she said, gripping his sleeve. "I'm trying not to. You are failing loudly. That sparrow has leadership potential. It has murder in its eyes." An airport employee walked over with a broom and the weary expression of someone who had seen this exact tragedy many times. Emily apologized 3 times. Nathan apologized once and was still smiling when they walked away. Emily looked mortified. "I am now banned from bird diplomacy." "You were brave. I used you as a shield. I noticed. You're taller." It was logical. Nathan wiped his eyes, still amused. For the first time since the phone call about her ex, Emily felt something loosen inside her. Not heal, not disappear, just loosen enough to let morning in. They walked the length of the terminal after that. No destination, no rush, just 2 people delaying goodbye by pretending the airport was a place worth exploring. They stopped near the observation windows and watched planes lift into the brightening sky. Emily leaned against the railing. "I used to think airports were sad." Nathan looked at her. "Why?" "Because everyone is either leaving someone or waiting for someone. That can be happy too, I guess. But when I was a kid, my dad left through one." Nathan's expression softened. Emily watched a plane turn toward the runway. He said it was just a business trip, Then he didn't come back. My mom told me grown-ups sometimes run out of courage before they run out of love. She gave a small smile. I didn't understand that then. I'm not sure I do now. Nathan stood quietly beside her. My mother loved airports. Emily glanced at him. She worked in one? Flight dispatcher. She knew every schedule, every delay, every storm pattern. She used to say planes were proof that heavy things could still rise if they had enough lift. That sounds beautiful. She was. His voice changed on the last word. Emily heard it. Nathan continued, looking out at the runway. She died when I was 23. After that, I built a life around aviation because I thought staying near what she loved would make missing her easier. Did it? Sometimes. And other times, he smiled faintly. Other times it just gave me a very expensive way to avoid feeling lonely. Emily looked at him then, really looked. Nathan Brooks, calm and polished and quietly funny, suddenly seemed less like the man who had found her at the wrong gate, and more like someone who had been waiting somewhere too. Not for a flight. For permission to admit he was tired. They stayed by the window for a long time. Talking became easier than silence, and silence became easier than pretending. Emily told him about her preschool class, about a 4-year-old who insisted clouds were sky sheep, about how children asked honest questions adults spent years avoiding. Nathan told her about learning to fix small engines with his father, about how he still kept his mother's old headset in his office drawer, though he had no idea why. They did not talk like people who had met hours ago. They talked like two lives had accidentally opened at the same page. That scared Emily a little. It scared Nathan too, but neither walked away. At 6:40 a.m., the announcement came. Flight 281 to Chicago, now boarding at gate B-22. Emily stopped. The words found her exactly where she had been trying not to think about them. Nathan looked toward the gate, then back at her. That's you. She nodded. That's me. They walked slowly toward B-22. Too slowly. At the entrance, passengers were already lining up. Emily's new boarding pass was in her hand. The old one was safely tucked in her pocket. She turned to Nathan. I guess this is where I try not to sit at the wrong gate again. You've shown growth. Thank you for your professional evaluation. You're welcome. They smiled, but sadness moved beneath it. Emily looked down. I should thank you. For last night. For the tissues. For not saying the obvious things. I didn't know what to say. That helped. He nodded. The gate agent called another group. Emily adjusted her grip on her suitcase handle. Neither of them asked for a number. Neither suggested social media. Maybe because the night had felt too fragile to turn into a contact card. Maybe because both were afraid that if daylight made it ordinary, the magic would disappear. Emily stepped toward the line. Then Nathan said her name. Emily. She turned. He stood there for 1 second, as if arguing with himself. Then he walked toward her. Can I do something I'll regret if I don't? Emily's heart stumbled. For once, she didn't overthink. She smiled softly. I hope so. Nathan stepped close, lifted one hand gently to her cheek, and kissed her. Just enough to say everything they were too afraid to name. The kiss was warm and brief, tasting faintly of coffee, airport air, and the impossible tenderness of a goodbye that had arrived too soon. When he pulled back, Emily's eyes were wet. Nathan's were too. The gate agent called final boarding. Emily looked toward the jet bridge, then back at him. I have to go. I know. Chicago is still there. So am I. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Emily held his gaze. Then she gave him the smallest smile, picked up her suitcase, and walked toward the gate. At the scanner, she looked back once. Nathan was still standing there. She wanted to run back and ask for his number. She wanted to tell him that meeting him at the wrong gate felt more right than anything in the last 2 years. Instead, she held up the old boarding pass from the night before. A silent promise, or maybe just proof. Then she disappeared down the jet bridge. Nathan stood at gate B-22 until the door closed. Only then did he reach into his coat pocket and realize she had accidentally left something behind. The handkerchief he had given her, folded around the corner of the wrong boarding pass. On it, in blue ink, she had written only 3 words. Wrong gate, right person. Nathan stared at the words long after her plane pushed away from the terminal, and for the first time in years, he wished he had missed more than one flight. 3 months passed. Chicago was colder than Emily expected. Not just the weather, though that was rude enough. The wind seemed personally offended by coats, and every morning her preschool students arrived with red cheeks, tiny backpacks, and stories that made her heart feel useful again. She found a small apartment above a bakery. She bought second-hand furniture. She stopped checking her ex-fiancé's social media. Mostly. Some nights, she still took the old boarding pass from her bedside drawer and read the words Nathan had found. Wrong gate, right person. She had written them in a moment of courage, then disappeared down a jet bridge before courage could become a phone number. Now she regretted that, every single week. She tried finding him. Nathan, Seattle, aviation, dry humor, tall, kind eyes, possibly hated birds. That was not enough information. One search brought up hundreds of Nathans. Another brought up airline employees, pilots, travel bloggers, and one magician named Nathan who specialized in airport-themed illusions, which felt emotionally unnecessary. Emily had no idea Nathan Brooks was the CEO of a private aviation company. To her, he was simply the man who had handed her a handkerchief instead of advice, the man who laughed when birds chased her, the man who kissed her like goodbye had hurt him too. Nathan searched too, carefully at first, then embarrassingly. He remembered her full name. Emily Parker, preschool teacher, moving to Chicago, one-way flight. Laugh like she had forgotten she was allowed to have one. It should have been enough. It was not. There were too many Emily Parkers, too many schools, too many privacy rules. His assistant noticed by week 2. Are we acquiring a preschool? Nathan looked up from his laptop. No. You've searched early childhood education directories for 47 minutes. That number is exaggerated. It is not. He closed the laptop. I'm looking for someone. A teacher? Yes. In a normal way or in a sad movie way? Nathan sighed. I missed the part where I was supposed to ask for her number. His assistant stared at him, then slowly sat down. Oh no. What? You had an airport romance. Nathan said nothing. That is serious, she said. Those come with montages. He leaned back. I don't need commentary. You need a phone number. He did, but he did not have one. Only an old boarding pass folded in his wallet. Only her handwriting. Only the memory of her turning back at the jet bridge and holding up proof that the night had meant something. For 3 months, Nathan carried that boarding pass with him through meetings, flights, boardrooms, and investor dinners. Whenever people spoke too loudly about growth and luxury and efficiency, he thought of Emily feeding toast to criminal birds near an airport window. He wondered if she was happy, if Chicago was kind, if she ever thought about Gate B8. In late spring, Brooks Air partnered with a national children's education nonprofit to launch a program called Little Wings, designed to teach young children about aviation, travel, and different careers in flight. Nathan hated public speaking, but his marketing director insisted he had to appear at the Chicago launch. It will be good for the company, she said. Nathan flipped through the schedule. Preschool groups? Yes. Children ask difficult questions. That's why it's charming. A child once asked me why planes don't get tired. What did you say? I said maintenance. His marketing director stared. We'll prepare talking points. The event took place inside a large hangar, converted into a colorful learning space. Paper airplanes hung from the ceiling. Children sat in rows on small mats. Teachers lined the back wall, whispering reminders about indoor voices that were being cheerfully ignored. Emily arrived with 12 preschoolers, 2 parent volunteers, and 1 little boy determined to wear cardboard wings through the entire presentation. She had no idea who the guest speaker was. The program flyer only said, "Special guest from Brooks Air." She was busy wiping apple juice from a student's sleeve when applause began near the stage. Then a man stepped up to the microphone. Emily looked up. The world stopped. Nathan. Not airport Nathan. Not canceled flight Nathan. Nathan in a navy suit, standing beneath the Brooks Air logo while photographers lifted cameras. Her breath caught. One of her students tugged her sleeve. Miss Emily, why are you making the fish face? Emily closed her mouth. I'm not. You are. She lowered herself onto the chair behind the children, heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the applause. Nathan began his speech. At least, he tried. He welcomed the families. thanked the nonprofit partners, said something about inspiring the next generation. Then his eyes moved across the room and found her, Emily, sitting between a teacher with a clipboard and a child wearing cardboard wings. For 1 second, Nathan completely forgot the English language. The room waited. His marketing director, standing near the stage, gave him a discreet look of panic. Nathan glanced down at the prepared speech in his hand, then back at Emily. He folded the paper, set it on the podium, and stepped away from the microphone. A confused murmur moved through the audience. The children loved it immediately. One whispered, "Is he escaping?" Nathan walked down the stage steps, past the photographers, past the nonprofit director, past his own shocked team, straight toward Emily. She stood slowly, unable to decide whether to laugh, cry, or run into a storage closet. Nathan stopped in front of her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he unfolded the old boarding pass, the one from Seattle, the one she had written on. His voice was quiet, but the microphone on his lapel still caught enough for the room to hear. "I think," he looked at the paper, then at her. "It's time I returned this." Emily covered her mouth. Around them, the room had gone silent except for one child whispering, "Is this part of airplane school?" Nathan smiled, but his eyes were bright. "I looked for you." Emily laughed through tears. "I looked for you too. I didn't know where. I didn't know you were Brooks Air. I didn't know you fed birds irresponsibly as a profession." That broke her. She laughed, and the sound hit him with the force of 3 months of missing it. Nathan held out the boarding pass. Emily took it with trembling fingers. "You kept it. Every day." Her eyes filled. "Why?" He looked at her, and this time he did not hide behind humor. Because it was the first time missing something felt like finding something better. The room softened around them. A few adults began smiling. One teacher wiped her eye. A little girl in the front row raised her hand. Nathan glanced down. "Yes? Are you going to kiss Miss Emily?" Emily turned scarlet. Nathan looked at her. "I'm trying to behave professionally." The little girl considered this. "My mommy says that's overrated." The room burst into laughter. Emily laughed too, wiping her cheeks. Nathan leaned closer, lowering his voice for her alone. "May I see you after this?" She looked down at the boarding pass, then back at him. "No." His face fell. Emily smiled through tears. "You may see me after you finish teaching these children why planes don't get tired." Nathan stared at her, then laughed. "Maintenance." Emily shook her head. "We'll work on it." He returned to the stage with the whole room watching and his prepared speech forgotten. This time, when he spoke, he did not talk about luxury aviation or corporate partnerships. He talked about how sometimes people end up at the wrong gate. How mistakes can become beginnings. How the best journeys are not always the ones we planned. And in the back row, Emily held the old boarding pass against her heart, realizing that 3 months of searching had finally brought her to the one person worth missing a flight for. 1 year later, Nathan Brooks still flew commercial sometimes. Not because he had to. He owned enough aircraft to make that argument ridiculous. But every few months, he bought a regular ticket, packed one overnight bag, and sat in an ordinary terminal with ordinary travelers, waiting beneath bright gate signs like everyone else. Emily found this endlessly amusing. One Friday evening at Seattle-Tacoma, she sat beside him at gate B8, holding 2 coffees and watching him check the departure board. "You're very wealthy," she said. Nathan looked at her. "I've heard rumors. You own planes. Several. And yet we are sitting here waiting for boarding group 4. He nodded solemnly. "A humbling spiritual exercise." Emily laughed. "Why don't you just use a private jet?" Nathan glanced toward the gate where they had met a year earlier. "Because you never know." "Never know what?" He smiled. "I might sit at the wrong gate again." Emily leaned against his shoulder. "That was my mistake. Best mistake I ever witnessed." She looked down at the old boarding pass in her wallet. She still carried it. The ink had faded slightly, but the words remained. Wrong gate, right person. Nathan reached into his coat pocket. "I have something for you." Emily raised an eyebrow. "If it's another speech about responsible bird feeding, I'm leaving." "It's not." He handed her 2 boarding passes. They looked real at first, but when Emily glanced at them, she frowned. There was no destination printed on either one. No gate. No departure time, only their names. Nathan Brooks, Emily Parker. She looked up slowly. Nathan, yes? This time, did you choose the wrong gate? He shook his head. No. His voice softened. For the first time in my life, I think I chose exactly right. Emily's breath caught. Nathan stood, then lowered himself to one knee in the middle of the terminal. People nearby began to notice. A child gasped. Someone whispered. Emily covered her mouth. Nathan opened a small velvet box. Emily Parker, he said, looking up at her, will you miss every flight, take every detour, wait through every delay, and find every unexpected gate with me for the rest of our lives? Tears filled her eyes. She laughed softly through them. Only if you promise me one thing. Anything. If we get lost again. He smiled. I'll wait. For how long? Nathan's eyes shone. Forever. Emily nodded. Yes. The terminal erupted into applause as he slid the ring onto her finger. She pulled him up and wrapped her arms around him, laughing and crying against his shoulder. Behind the glass, a plane lifted into the evening sky. This time, neither of them ran after it. They had already found the right departure. Sometimes we spend so much energy mourning the door that closed, we never notice the one quietly opening beside us. Emily thought she had ruined everything by sitting at the wrong gate. But if she had boarded the right flight that night, she might have missed the person who would change her life forever. I think that's one of life's quietest miracles. Not every delay is a punishment. Not every wrong turn is a mistake. Some of them are simply giving two people enough time to find each other. So here's a question I'd love to leave with you. Looking back on your own life, was there ever a moment that felt like a terrible mistake, but later became one of the greatest blessings you ever received? I'd love to read your story in the comments. And if stories like this remind you that hope often arrives when we least expect it, I hope you'll join us by subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories. There are still many journeys ahead, and perhaps the next one will remind you that the best destinations are sometimes found after missing the first flight.